Have you ever dreamed of being filthy rich? Of having more money than you know what to do with? Well, what if I told you there's a secret method that claims you can do just that, simply by changing your thoughts? It might sound too good to be true, but stick with me, because we're about to dive into something that could completely transform your life. We're talking about Neville Goddard's law of assumption, a powerful idea that suggests you can literally think your way to wealth. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, that's impossible. You can't just imagine money into existence. But here's the thing. What if you could? What if the key to unlocking untold riches was already inside your mind, just waiting to be used? That's exactly what we're going to explore today. Think about it for a second. How many times have you looked at your bank account and felt a sinking feeling in your stomach? How often have you stressed about bills, debts, or not having enough money to do the things you really want to do? We've all been there. It's frustrating, it's stressful, and it can make you feel trapped. But what if there was a way out? What if you could break free from financial worries and step into a life of abundance? That's where Neville Goddard's law of assumption comes in. It's not about winning the lottery or finding a magical money tree. It's about something much more powerful, the incredible ability of your own mind to shape your reality. And trust me, once you understand this, it could change everything for you. So are you ready to discover a method that could potentially skyrocket your wealth? Are you open to the idea that your thoughts might be the key to unlocking the riches you've always dreamed of? If so, you're in for a wild ride. Because we're about to explore a concept that goes against everything you've probably been taught about money and success. But if you stick with me, you might just find the secret to becoming super rich. And it all starts in your head. Let's get right into it. The mind-blowing idea we're talking about today is all about ignoring what you see around you and believing in what you want instead. Now, I know that sounds a bit crazy. After all, we're taught from a young age to be realistic, to look at the facts, and to base our decisions on what we can see and touch. But what if that's exactly what's been holding us back all this time? Think about it this way. When you look around at your current financial situation, what do you see? Maybe you see a stack of bills on the table. Maybe you see a bank account that's not as full as you'd like. Maybe you see a job that's not paying you what you're worth. And every time you look at these things, how do you feel? Probably not great, right? But here's where it gets interesting. What if, instead of focusing on all of that, you chose to believe in something different? What if, despite all the evidence to the contrary, you decided to believe that you were already wealthy, that money flowed to you easily and abundantly, that you were a magnet for financial opportunities? I can almost hear you saying, "But that's not true. I can't just pretend to be rich when I'm not." And you're right in a way. We're not talking about pretending or lying to yourself. We're talking about something much deeper and more powerful. We're talking about changing your fundamental beliefs about money and wealth. You see, according to Neville Goddard's law of assumption, what you believe to be true becomes your reality. It's not about ignoring facts, but about choosing which facts you want to focus on and believe in. And this isn't just some fluffy, feel-good idea. It's based on the understanding that our thoughts and beliefs shape our actions, our attitudes, and ultimately our results. Think of it like this. If you believe you're bad with money, what happens? You probably avoid looking at your finances. You might make impulsive purchases because, What's the point in saving anyway? You might pass up opportunities to invest or earn more because you don't believe you're capable of handling it. And all of these actions, born from your belief, end up reinforcing the idea that you're bad with money. But what if you flipped that belief on its head? What if you chose to believe that you were excellent with money? That you were a financial genius just waiting to be discovered? How would that change your actions? You might start reading about investing. You might look for ways to increase your income. You might make more conscious decisions about your spending. And bit by bit, these new actions, born from your new belief, would start to create a new financial reality for you. This is the power of the law of assumption. It's not about denying reality, but about choosing which reality you want to create. And when it comes to becoming super rich, this idea could be the game changer you've been looking for. Now that we've got a general idea of what we're talking about, let's dive a bit deeper into this law of assumption. What exactly is it, and how does it relate to becoming rich? At its core, the law of assumption is pretty simple. It states that whatever you assume to be true will become true in your experience. In other words, your assumptions about yourself and the world around you will shape your reality. It's like you're constantly sending out signals to the universe, and the universe is responding by giving you experiences that match those signals. So how does this relate to becoming rich? Well, think about the assumptions most people have about money. Money is hard to come by. You have to work really hard to be wealthy. Rich people are lucky or born into it. I'll never be truly wealthy. Sound familiar? These are the kinds of assumptions many of us carry around without even realizing it. And according to the law of assumption, these beliefs are actually creating our financial reality. But here's where it gets exciting. If negative assumptions can create a negative financial reality, then positive assumptions can create a positive financial reality. What if you started assuming things like, money comes to me easily. I always have more than enough. I'm a money magnet. Wealth is my natural state. According to the law of assumption, if you truly believe these things, your reality will start to shift to match these new assumptions. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But that's not how the world works. You can't just think yourself rich. And you're right in a way. The law of assumption isn't about sitting on your couch, thinking about money, and expecting it to rain from the sky. It's about changing your fundamental beliefs about money and wealth, which in turn changes your actions and decisions. You see, when you assume you're wealthy, you start to think like a wealthy person. You make decisions like a wealthy person. You spot opportunities like a wealthy person. And bit by bit, these changes in your thinking and behavior start to create real changes in your financial situation. This is why the law of assumption is so different from what most people think about getting rich. It's not about finding the right investment or working 80 hours a week or winning the lottery. It's about changing your inner world, your thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions, and watching as your outer world changes to match. But here's the kicker, and this is really important. The law of assumption requires more than just positive thinking. It's not about repeating affirmations you don't believe or trying to force yourself to feel positive about money. It's about reaching a state where you truly, deeply assume that wealth is your natural state. It's about feeling the reality of being wealthy before you see any evidence of it in your physical world. This is where many people struggle. It's one thing to say, "I am wealthy," when your bank account is empty. It's another thing entirely to feel it, to know it, to assume it so completely that you're not even surprised when money starts flowing into your life. So how do you reach this state? How do you change your assumptions so deeply that you start attracting wealth like a magnet? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore in the rest of this video. We're going to look at practical techniques you can use to apply the law of assumption in your own life. We'll talk about how to overcome the biggest obstacles that keep people stuck in financial scarcity. And we'll explore real-life examples of people who have used this law to transform their financial lives. But before we go any further, I want you to understand something crucial. The law of assumption isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not about manipulating the universe to give you what you want. It's about aligning your inner world with the wealth and abundance you desire. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts wealth and success. And here's the really beautiful thing about it. As you start to assume wealth and abundance for yourself, you'll likely find that you become more generous, more willing to help others, more focused on creating value in the world. Because true wealth isn't just about having a lot of money. It's about living a rich life in every sense of the word. So, are you ready to dive deeper into the law of assumption? Are you ready to challenge your current beliefs about money and wealth? Are you ready to start assuming a new, more abundant reality for yourself? If so, stick with me, because we're about to explore some powerful ideas and techniques that could completely transform your financial life. Remember, the journey to wealth starts in your mind, and with the law of assumption, you have a powerful tool to reshape your thoughts, your beliefs, and ultimately, your financial reality. The problem with reality: why what you see isn't always what you get. Let's talk about reality for a moment. We're taught from a young age to trust our eyes, to believe what we can see and touch. Seeing is believing, right? Well, when it comes to creating wealth, this might be exactly what's holding you back. The problem with focusing on your current reality is that it can trap you in a cycle of lack and limitation. Think about it. When you look at your current financial situation, what do you see? If you're like most people, you probably see bills that need to be paid, a paycheck that doesn't stretch far enough, and a bank account that's not as healthy as you'd like. And every time you focus on these things, you're reinforcing the idea that this is your reality. It's like you're telling the universe, "This is what I have, and this is all I can expect." Let's use money as an example. Say you check your bank account and see a low balance. What happens next? You might start to worry about how you'll pay your bills. You might feel stressed or anxious. You might start thinking things like, "I never have enough money," or "I'm bad with finances." And here's the kicker. These thoughts and feelings actually influence your actions. You might avoid looking for better job opportunities because you don't feel qualified. You might pass up on investment opportunities because you think you don't have enough to invest. You might even spend money impulsively because you figure, "What's the point in trying to save?" All of these actions, born from focusing on your current reality, end up creating more of the same. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You see lack, you expect lack, you act from a place of lack, and so you create more lack. It's a vicious cycle, and it's one that keeps many people stuck in financial struggles. But it gets even trickier. When you're constantly looking at what you don't want, not enough money, too many bills, a job you don't like, you're actually giving more power to these things. It's like you're shining a spotlight on them, making them seem bigger and more important than they really are. And the more attention you give to what you don't want, the more it seems to grow. This is why simply working harder often doesn't solve financial problems. You can work 80 hours a week, but if you're constantly focused on not having enough, you're likely to keep creating situations where you don't have enough. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And if your inner world is full of thoughts of scarcity and lack, that's exactly what you'll keep experiencing. So, if focusing on current reality is the problem, what's the solution? Well, that's where the power of imagination comes in. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Now that we understand why focusing on current reality can keep us stuck, let's talk about the incredible tool we all have at our disposal, our imagination. Your imagination isn't just for daydreaming or coming up with creative ideas. According to the law of assumption, it's actually the key to changing your life and attracting wealth. Here's how it works. Your imagination is like a preview of coming attractions. When you imagine something vividly, your brain and body react as if it's really happening. You might have experienced this if you've ever imagined biting into a lemon and felt your mouth water, or if you've imagined something embarrassing and felt yourself blush. Your body doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's vividly imagined. So when it comes to becoming rich, your imagination is your secret weapon. Instead of focusing on your current bank balance, you can use your imagination to create a new, wealthier reality in your mind. And here's the amazing part. When you do this consistently, you start to feel different. You start to think different, and eventually, you start to act different. Imagine for a moment that you're already wealthy. Really put yourself in that mindset. How would you walk? How would you talk? How would you make decisions? How would you feel when you wake up in the morning? When you can imagine these things vividly, you start to embody the energy of wealth. And that energy is what attracts wealth to you. Let's look at a simple example. Say you want to buy a new car, but right now, you don't have the money. Instead of focusing on the fact that you can't afford it, you could use your imagination to create the experience of already owning that car. Imagine yourself sitting in the driver's seat, feeling the steering wheel under your hands. Imagine the smell of the new car interior. Imagine the feeling of pride and joy as you drive it. When you do this regularly, something interesting starts to happen. You might start noticing that particular car more often on the road. You might overhear someone talking about a great deal at a car dealership. You might feel inspired to look for ways to increase your income. All of these are signs that your imagination is starting to influence your reality. This is why imagining being rich is so important. It's not just about fantasizing or wishful thinking. It's about creating such a vivid and real experience of wealth in your mind that it starts to feel natural and normal to you. When wealth feels normal, you naturally start to make decisions and take actions that align with that sense of wealth. Remember, your imagination is not bound by your current circumstances. In your imagination, you can be, do, and have anything you want. And according to the law of assumption, as you assume the feeling of being wealthy in your imagination, you start to draw that wealth into your physical reality. Now that we understand the power of imagination, let's talk about how to actually apply the law of assumption to start attracting wealth. Here are 4 simple steps you can take to start using this powerful law in your own life. Step 1. Choose your desired reality. The first step is to get crystal clear on what you want. Don't just think, I want to be rich. Get specific. How much money do you want to have? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? What would you do with your wealth? The more specific you can be, the easier it will be to imagine and feel it as real. For example, instead of just saying, I want to be wealthy, you might say, I have $10 million in my bank account. I live in a beautiful beachfront home. I travel the world first class and donate generously to causes I care about. The key is to make it vivid and exciting to you. Step 2. Create a mental movie. Once you know what you want, it's time to use your imagination to create it in your mind. This is where you become the director of your own mental movie. Close your eyes and imagine your wealthy life in as much detail as possible. See yourself waking up in your dream home. Feel the excitement as you check your bank account and see millions of dollars. Imagine the joy of being able to help your family and contribute to causes you care about. The key here is to engage all your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? The more real you can make it in your mind, the more powerful this exercise becomes. Step 3. Feel it real. This step is crucial. It's not enough to just visualize your wealthy life. You need to feel it as if it's already real. This is where many people struggle, but it's also where the real magic happens. As you imagine your wealthy life, allow yourself to feel the emotions you would feel if it were already true. Feel the joy, the excitement, the peace, the confidence. If you find this difficult at first, start small. Maybe you can't yet feel what it's like to have millions in the bank, but you can feel what it's like to have an extra $100. Start there and gradually expand that feeling. This final step is about bringing your imagined reality into your everyday life. Start making decisions and taking actions as if you were already wealthy. This doesn't mean spending money you don't have. It means adopting the mindset, the confidence, and the energy of a wealthy person. For example, a wealthy person might be more likely to invest in themselves, to look for opportunities, to network with successful people. Start doing these things now. When you face a decision, ask yourself, what would my wealthy self do in this situation? Then do that. Remember, applying the law of assumption is not a one-time thing. It's a practice. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes, and the more you'll start to see changes in your outer world. It might feel strange or even silly at first, but stick with it. Many people who've used this method report that at first, nothing seems to happen. But if you persist, you'll start to notice small changes, then bigger ones, until one day you realize your imagined reality has become your actual reality. As you practice these steps, be patient with yourself. Change doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent practice, you can begin to shift your assumptions about wealth and start attracting more abundance into your life. Remember, the key is to make your imagined wealthy reality feel so real and so natural that your current reality has no choice but to catch up. Common mistakes to avoid. Don't let these trip you up. As you start applying the law of assumption to attract wealth, it's important to be aware of some common pitfalls that can slow down your progress. Let's look at 3 big mistakes people often make and how to avoid them. One of the biggest obstacles people face when trying to use the law of assumption is doubt. You might start imagining your wealthy life, feeling great about it, and then that little voice in your head pipes up. Who are you kidding? This will never happen. This doubt can undo all your good work. Remember, the law of assumption is about assuming your desire is already true. If you're constantly doubting, you're actually assuming that your desire isn't true. To avoid this, catch yourself when you start doubting. Gently remind yourself that your imagined reality is just as real as your current reality. It just hasn't materialized yet. Practice redirecting your thoughts back to your desired outcome whenever doubt creeps in. Another common mistake is expecting instant results and giving up when they don't appear. The law of assumption isn't about making money magically appear overnight. It's about changing your deep-seated beliefs and assumptions, which takes time. Many people start out enthusiastic, imagining their wealthy life every day. But after a week or two, when they don't see big changes, they give up. They decide it doesn't work. But here's the thing. Big changes often start with small shifts. You might not wake up to millions in your bank account, but you might notice a free coffee, an unexpected refund, or a new money-making idea. These are signs that your assumption is starting to work. To avoid this mistake, commit to practicing the law of assumption for at least 30 days without expecting specific results. Focus on how it makes you feel rather than looking for outer changes. Often, the inner change comes first and the outer reality follows. The third big mistake is getting caught up in trying to figure out exactly how your wealth will come to you. You might find yourself thinking, okay, I'm imagining being wealthy, but how exactly is this money going to come to me? Will I win the lottery, get a raise, inherit money from a long-lost relative? Here's the problem with that. When you focus on the how, you're actually limiting yourself. You're saying that wealth can only come to you in certain ways. But the universe, or your subconscious mind, depending on how you look at it, has infinite ways of bringing your assumption into reality. To avoid this mistake, focus on the end result, the feeling of being wealthy, rather than the means of getting there. Trust that if you maintain the assumption of wealth, the right opportunities and circumstances will show up. Your job is not to figure out how it will happen, but to maintain the assumption that it is happening. Now that we've covered the common mistakes to avoid, let's look at some inspiring success stories of people who've used the law of assumption to transform their financial lives. These stories show that this isn't just theory, it's a practical tool that can create real change. Take Sarah, for example. Sarah was a single mom working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She was constantly stressed about money and felt like she was always one step away from financial disaster. Then she learned about the law of assumption. At first she was skeptical, but she decided to give it a try. Every night before bed, Sarah would spend 10 minutes imagining herself financially secure. She imagined checking her bank account and seeing a comfortable balance. She imagined paying her bills with ease and still having plenty left over. She imagined taking her kids on vacation without worrying about the cost. At first, nothing seemed to change, but Sarah kept at it. After a few weeks, she noticed she was feeling less stressed about money. She started seeing opportunities she hadn't noticed before. She applied for a better-paying job that she previously would have thought was out of her league, and she got it. Within 6 months, her income had doubled, and she was well on her way to the financial security she had been imagining. Then there's Mike. Mike had always dreamed of starting his own business, but he never seemed to have enough money to get started. He was stuck in a job he hated, feeling like his entrepreneurial dreams were slipping away. When he learned about the law of assumption, he decided to apply it to his business dreams. Every day, Mike would imagine himself as a successful business owner. He imagined signing contracts with big clients, seeing profits roll in, and feeling the satisfaction of building something from scratch. He imagined the freedom and fulfillment of being his own boss. Within a few months, Mike had an idea for a low-cost startup in his industry. He found the courage to quit his job and throw himself into his new venture. It wasn't always easy, but Mike kept using the law of assumption, always seeing himself as successful even when faced with challenges. 2 years later, Mike's company was thriving, making more money than he ever did at his old job. These stories teach us important lessons. First, consistency is key. Both Sarah and Mike practiced the law of assumption regularly, even when they didn't see immediate results. Second, the law of assumption doesn't just bring money. It changes your mindset, helping you see opportunities and find courage you didn't know you had. And third, the results might not always come in the way you expect. But if you maintain your assumption of wealth and success, amazing things can happen. Even when you understand the law of assumption and are committed to applying it, doubts can still creep in. It's natural and happens to everyone. The key is knowing how to handle these doubts when they arise. First, let's talk about why doubts come up. Often it's because we've been conditioned for so long to believe that money is hard to come by, that we have to struggle to be wealthy, or that we're somehow not deserving of abundance. These old beliefs can be stubborn, popping up just when we think we've moved past them. Another reason for doubt is the gap between our imagined reality and our current circumstances. When you're imagining millions in the bank, but your actual account is overdrawn, it can be hard to maintain your assumption of wealth. This contrast can bring up doubt and frustration. Acknowledge the doubt, but don't engage with it. When a doubtful thought comes up, simply notice it. Say to yourself, I see that doubt, but don't argue with it or try to push it away. Often, just acknowledging the doubt without feeding it is enough to let it pass. Remind yourself of past successes. Think of times in your life when you've overcome obstacles or achieved things you once thought impossible. This can help rebuild your confidence in your ability to create change. Focus on feeling good now. Sometimes we get so caught up in the goal that we forget to enjoy the journey. Take time each day to appreciate what you have now. Feeling good and grateful now makes it easier to believe in a positive future. Revise your mental scenes. If your imagined wealthy life feels too far out of reach, try creating mental scenes that feel more believable but still represent progress. Instead of imagining millions, start with imagining an extra $1,000, for example. Take inspired action. Sometimes doubt comes from feeling stuck. Look for small actions you can take that align with your wealthy self. This could be reading books about finance, networking with successful people, or starting a side hustle. Remember, doubt is not a sign that the law of assumption isn't working. It's just a normal part of the process. The key is to keep going, to keep assuming your desired reality even when your outer world hasn't caught up yet. Every time you choose your assumption over your doubt, you're building a stronger foundation for your future wealth. It's like working out a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. So don't be discouraged by doubts. See them as opportunities to strengthen your assumption and deepen your commitment to your wealthy future. We've covered a lot of ground in exploring Neville Goddard's law of assumption and how it relates to becoming super rich. From understanding why focusing on current reality can hold us back, to harnessing the power of our imagination, to practical steps for applying this law in our lives, we've laid out a roadmap for transforming your financial reality. Remember, the law of assumption isn't about denying your current circumstances or engaging in wishful thinking. It's about consciously choosing what you want to assume as true and living from that assumption until it becomes your reality. It's a powerful tool that has changed lives, as we saw in our success stories. But here's the most important thing to remember: this isn't just about money. Yes, we've focused on wealth in this video because financial freedom is something many people desire. But the real power of the law of assumption is that it puts you in the driver's seat of your life. It reminds you that you have the power to shape your reality, to create the life you want, not just in terms of money, but in all areas. As you start to apply these principles, you might find that not only does your financial situation improve, but you also become more confident, more optimistic, and more open to opportunities in all areas of your life. You might find yourself becoming the kind of person who not only attracts wealth, but also uses that wealth to make a positive impact in the world. So, I encourage you to take what you've learned here and put it into practice. Start today. Choose an aspect of wealth that you want to experience. Create a vivid mental image of it, feel it as real, and start living as if it's already true. Be patient with yourself, persist through doubts, and stay committed to your assumption. Remember, every wealthy person you admire once started where you are now. The only difference is the assumptions they chose to hold and live by. You have the same power within you. Your journey to wealth, true, fulfilling, abundant wealth, starts now with the assumptions you choose to make